Hi everybody, welcome to this maths video. So in this video we're going to look at how to find the area and circumference of a circle. Now the area is the same as our rectangles and our triangles, just the amount of space that circle takes up. The circumference is kind of similar to perimeter. It's how long is the outside of the circle. So if we started at this point here where the arrow is touching and we travel the whole distance outside the circle, so we could start here and go the whole way around, what distance would we have travelled? That's what the circumference is. Now, handily enough, if we look in our log tables, one of the first pages has the formulas we need for the area and circumference of a circle. On the log tables, they'll have the Irish information over here on the left. You do not need to worry about that because you don't go to a Wales school. And then they'll have the English information over on the right. So they're saying this is for a circle or a disc. The circumference is marked by L. So we have this formula here for the circumference. The length of the circumference is 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by this radius here. And if we want to calculate the area is pi multiplied by the radius squared. Now, certainly with me, you haven't seen this term here before, with this letter. Believe it or not, it actually is a letter, but it's a letter from the Greek alphabet. It's pronounced pi, and if we wanted to spell it in the English alphabet, we spell it P-I. But we always use this symbol here. So it might be worth your while to just pause the video and practice drawing that symbol a couple of times. This is how I draw it. You can probably do a slightly better job of it yourself if you just look at the way it's written up here. Now, pi is a pretty interesting number because it goes on forever. It's a decimal. It goes 3.1415926, and it just keeps on going on forever and ever and ever, and it never even repeats itself, right? Now, that's a very awkward number to do any calculations with, because if it just goes on forever, you can't really put it into your calculator. So what we can do is sometimes we'll let pi be a fraction as 22 over 7. And that's not exactly pi, but it's close enough because we can't write out pi the full way, because like I said, it goes on forever. Or sometimes we'll let pi be a decimal and we'll just say, you know what, let's round it to 2 decimal places. It's going to be 3.14. And sometimes we're just going to let pi be pi. So we'll leave it as pi in our answer, okay? So we're going to look at an example of finding the perimeter and the area using all three of these values for pi. Now the method is going to be exactly the same. It's just sometimes we're going to use 22 over 7, sometimes 3.14, and sometimes we'll leave our answer in terms of pi. That's because the question could ask you to do any three of those. And if it doesn't ask you to choose a specific one, then you go nuts and you just choose whichever one you want to do. Personally, I like 3.14 because I like decimals better than fractions. They're just easier to put into my calculator. Okay, so let's look at our first example here. I've got the two formulae written up the top here, just like you'd find them in your log tables, just for our reference. And the question here says, letting pi equal to 22 over 7, find the area and perimeter of the circle below. So now if we try and solve this question, let's just go for the area first. Because that's what they ask us for first, right? We're going to do the area and the perimeter. So we'll write out the formula. Area is equal to pi times by the radius squared. Now a lot of the time in an exam, they'll give you marks just for writing out the formula, so make sure you do that, okay? Next we're going to sub in what we know. So if we want to find the area, it says to let pi equal to 22 over 7. So let's sub that in. 22 over 7 goes in for pi. Put that in brackets because we've subbed it in. And then the radius is r, and that looks like 3 centimeters here, right? Remember, the radius is the distance from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle. So we can sub in 3 for r. Now again, all we've done is subbed in 22 over 7 for pi and 3 for r, our radius. And now we just try and solve this, right? So we can see that we have to multiply these two numbers and we have to square this one. BIMDIS says we do indices before we do multiplying. So let's do our indices and square 3 first of all. 3 squared, you can do it on your calculator if you're not able to do it in your head, is 9. Okay, so our area here is 28 and 2/7. Now I'm given the answer in a fraction because they asked me to use pi as a fraction, right? I don't think you're going to win or lose big marks over this. I'm just trying to do my best to keep them happy. Whoever asked me the question, so probably an examiner, is the most important person to keep happy. And then because it's area, we just check we're using the right units. So centimeters were in the question, centimeters are going to be in our answer. And then area means we square the units. Now it's really easy to forget in a question like this. We're asked to do two things. We also need to find the perimeter. So let's look at the equation for the perimeter, or the formula. That's L is equal to 2 pi r. So 2 times by pi times by the radius. Again, you usually get marks for just writing out the formula. We usually get marks for just subbing it in as well. So let's rewrite it, but sub in what we can. 2 is just going to stay as 2. Pi is 22/7. And or our radius is 3 centimeters. Now all that we have to do is multiply these three things by each other, right? If we've got terms in brackets with no sign in between them, we just multiply them. And our answer here, again, we're going to give it as a fraction, just because they asked us to put in pi as a fraction. It's going to be 18 and 6/7. And because it's the length, we're just going to measure it in centimeters. Again, the same unit that they gave us in the question. So now we're going to go on and look at another question where we're asked to let pi equal to 3.14. And again, we're asked to find the area and the perimeter. So it can be handy to just underline those two things so we don't forget there's two things that we need to find. So if we look at the diagram here, the first thing that jumps out at me is the fact that they haven't given us the radius, they've given us the diameter, which is the whole distance across the circle. Now the radius is the distance from the midpoint of the circle out to the side, which will be exactly half this length. So the radius here will be half of 10, or 5 centimeters. That's just important to note because we're going to have to deal with the radius if we want to find the circumference and the area. So let's go. It asks us to find the area first of all, so we write out our formula. Again, often you get points just for writing out this formula. Then we're going to sub it in. Again, you're often going to get points just for subbing it in. So the area is pi r squared. This time it says let pi equal to 3.14. So you put 3.14 in the brackets. Then the radius is 5. And then we're going to square it. Now again, this says that when we have to multiply two things and get a power, we do the power first. So we can do 5 squared in our calculator. And it gives us 25. And then we'll do our multiplication, multiply that by 3.14, which gives us an answer here of 78.5. Now again, we want to make sure we have our units in here, so we'll take the same unit as we got in the question, which is centimeters, and then because it's area, we're going to make sure to square it. Now this time I left my answer as a decimal because they asked us to put in 3.14. So if they ask you to put decimals in, usually you get decimals out at the end. Just like before, when we put fractions in, we got fractions out. Again, you're not going to gain or lose any huge marks for this. It's just to keep the examiner happy. It might get you 1 or 2 extra marks. Now if we move on to perimeter, we can write out the formula. L is equal to 2 pi r. Once we've written out the formula, we start subbing it in. 2 stays as 2, pi goes to 3.14. Then or our radius is 5 here. Multiply all them out in your calculator and you get 31.4 centimeters. Again, centimeters there is for length. We just use the units that were given in the question. It doesn't have to be squared because that's only for area. Okay, this time they want us to find the area and perimeter of the circle in terms of pi. So they haven't asked us to put in a 22/7 or a 3.14. They want us to leave the answer in terms of pi. So this is a little bit different, but I'll show you what it looks like. Again, if we want to find the area, write out the formula for area. Area is pi times the radius squared. This is in your log tables. Then we sub it in, but because they want us to leave it in terms of pi, we just leave pi as pi. And the radius here, we do sub in, so that's 2 squared. Again, we just square our 2 first of all. 2 squared is 4. So the area then is pi multiplied by 4, which we more commonly write as 4 pi. Same way as x times 4, we write it as 4x. We do keep our units though, and area is in units squared, so it's going to be meters squared. So 4 pi meters squared. Now they asked for it in terms of pi, so basically you just don't sub anything in for pi, and you leave pi as part of the answer. And we can do the same thing for the perimeter. Write out the formula. L is equal to 2 pi, or sub in what we can. So the circumference is going to be equal to 2 times by pi, leave it as pi because they want the answer in terms of pi, times by the radius, which is also 2. We can multiply the two normal numbers, so 2 by 2 is 4, multiplied by pi, which we just call 4 pi. And then make sure you put in your units. This time it's meters instead of centimeters. And that's it, done.